Thank you, Rabbi Green. Shana Tova, everybody.
Shana Tova.
Let me just reassure you that I did not use artificial intelligence to write this sermon. Imagine for a moment that you have been given a microphone, a stage, and a national TV audience. Millions of people are hanging on your words because you matter and you have influence. You are free to say, not hearing there? You are free to say whatever you want, provided that you begin with these 3 words. As a Jew. To help you in this exercise, I have some questions for you. As a Jew, which of these 2 photographs would you use to express your sense of identity? The one from the Warsaw Ghetto of the little boy with the Jewish star, hands raised in the presence of Nazi soldiers? Or the one of the IDF soldier wearing talit and tefillin, standing in prayer on top of a Merkava tank? Now, to give the question some recent relevance, in June, when you learned that Israel had begun to strike Iran, which of those 2 images would describe your dominant thoughts? Along the same lines, the story is told that when Israel reconquered the old city of Jerusalem in June 1967, Rav Shlomo Goren, the chief rabbi of the IDF, called for the assembled troops to recite Hallel, celebratory psalms. But one of the combat soldiers protested. Having lost so many friends in battle, he felt the occasion called for Tachanun, passages of pain and contrition. There is not a single prayer service which has both Hallel and Tachanun. They are mutually exclusive. As a Jew, which prayer do you think was more appropriate? Now, I'm well aware that I have presented harsh dichotomies, and perhaps that's unfair of me. But I ask these questions because for 718 days, we have heard and seen fellow Jews condemn Israel's response to Hamas's brutal attack on October 7th, prefaced by the words, "As a Jew," using the inaccurate and harmful language of genocide and apartheid. Some of these words came recently at the Emmy Awards, as if Hollywood celebrities have insight into the workings of the real world. Those observations I dismiss. But some of Israel's harshest critics are in many respects the very kind of Jews we wish we had in this community. Learned, committed Jews who are motivated by authentic Jewish wisdom and values. Some of them may be your children and grandchildren. Some of what they say may resonate deeply with you as a Jew. Throughout these Yamim Noraim, these days of awe, I will be working through my own as a Jew statement. Each of the 3 drashot I'll offer over the next 10 days will be an attempt to articulate what being Jewish means to me, and I hope to inspire you to undertake a similar journey of Cheshbon HaNefesh HaYehudi, your own Jewish identity audit. For the next 3 weeks, we are going to use words and symbols that emphasize the common thread that binds us, Jews in Eastern Queens, to Jews b'chol makom shehem, wherever else they might be. Last night, whether our tables included apples, pomegranates, or fish heads, we all celebrated the arrival of Rosh Hashanah with some food that symbolizes hopes for the new beginnings. The Amidah, the central prayer of every service on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, asks God to bestow honor on us as a distinct people who have a specific homeland. We ask God for simcha le'artzenu v'sason le'artzecha v'sason le'irecha, joy for your land and gladness for your city, toward which every Jewish community worldwide orients its prayers. Come Sukkot in 2 weeks, we will gather the lulav, etrog, hadas, and arava, the 4 species of the festival, and hold them together. The rabbis say that each species represents a Jew of varying sensibilities, but we can only make a bracha on them when they are held closely together as aguda achat, one unified bundle. I like these images, for as a Jew, I am committed to the principle of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lazeh, that the Jewish people are so much part of the same Eruv, the same collective, that we are Eravon, collateral assurances for one another's well-being. But friends, sometimes it's hard. Some of the very Jews I'm committed to loving spend too much of their time worrying about what the rest of the world thinks of them, making our lives more difficult. And still other Jews care so little about what the Goyim think that, you guessed it, they make our lives more difficult. Allow me to explain. Sarah Hurwitz was, by her own admission, in the first category of Jews. She didn't want her Jewishness to reflect too badly on herself for the purposes of impressing her broader social circle. Hurwitz, who was the lead speechwriter for First Lady Michelle Obama, has since begun to probe the depths of her tradition and identity, leading to her 2019 memoir called Here All Along. She has since toured college campuses meeting with Jewish students after October 7th, and she's also taken her own exploratory tour of Jewish history, anti-Semitism, and Zionism. She empathizes with those Jews who have sought acceptance by broader society, past and present. As she writes in her just-released book, As a Jew, she writes, "You can understand why in 1933 German Jews still believed they might save themselves. That year, a leading Jewish organization began painstakingly compiling a 1,060-page book detailing Jews' achievements in every sector to remind the Nazis of everything they had contributed to Germany, their scientific discoveries, great works of literature and art, heroism in battle. But we know how things turned out. The Nazis burned that achievement tome those German Jews had so diligently drafted. In its application today, she can see how some Jewish anti-Zionists seem so desperate to curry favor with their would-be intersectional partners that they have sold their own people for their own birthright. They might even be supporters of a certain mayoral candidate whose platform proudly includes anti-Zionist policy promises. Of these Jews, she writes, "These anti-Zionists do not traffic in outlandish accusations or anti-Semitic tropes. But while they offer detailed analyses of Israel's flaws, some of which I agreed with, I was struck by how uninterested they seemed in thinking through the details of what would happen if Jews were stripped of power in Israel. They never provided a convincing answer to the question of how exactly Jews without a state of their own would be safe in a part of the world where so many people wish to annihilate them." She writes, "I was jarred by the contrast between these thinkers' passionate concern for Palestinians and their nonchalance about the lives of 7 million Jews in Israel. In other words, how can these Jews care so little about the fate of fellow Jews?" And on the other hand, we have those Jews who have decided that what the world thinks about us means nothing. You know, it used to be that Zionism stood for being part of the family of nations, that the normalization dreamt of by Herzl and the founders of the movement of political Zionism, those were the builders of the state. Now, granted, the official body of the family of nations has for decades been hostile to Israel, leading David Ben-Gurion using the UN's Hebrew acronym to utter famously Shmum, that is best translated as UN Pu-En. But recently, Israel's governing coalition has decided that being alone in the world is an opportunity. Somehow, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who built his credentials as the eloquent speaker of unaccented English, presenting Israel's case to the world, gave a speech last week calling on Israelis to be prepared to become a super Sparta, to prepare for diplomatic and economic isolation from the family of nations. Do you remember the prophet Bilam, hired to curse the Israelites on their way to the promised land? Does he ever actually succeed in cursing them? Well, it depends on how you read one phrase of his vision. Ki merosh tzurim erenu migvaot ashurenu, hen am levadad yishkon uvagoyim lo yitchashav. As I see them from the mountaintops, gaze on them from the heights, there is a people that dwells apart, not reckoned among the nations. Is this a blessing or a curse? Those who saw it as a blessing understood that we are to stand apart from the rest of the world for the purpose of being holy. But today's religious ultranationalists, the ones who no doubt cheered the Super Sparta speech, believe that the purpose of Jewish separateness is separateness itself. Spun this way, Bilam's words are a curse. To be a pariah, my friends, is not a badge of honor. A few years ago, I shared an absurd legal question, and I'll repeat it. If a person is born with two heads, must tefillin be placed on both? Are they one entity on which one tefillah would suffice, or are they separate beings, each requiring its own? Of course, this isn't a real question of halacha. It's a philosophical inquiry. So the commentators introduced the following solution. Blindfold one of the heads and pour boiling water on the other. If the blindfolded head screams in pain, it is one entity. For unity is defined as feeling the pain of the other as if it was inflicted on oneself. It's worth coming back to this parable because we are living in a Jewish world in which one head is getting scalded and the other too frequently isn't feeling its pain. For Jewish anti-Zionists to ignore what it would mean to realize their morbid and impractical dream of dismantling the Jewish state is an abandonment of family. For Jewish arch-separatists to ignore the impact of their policies on their fellow Jews is likewise an abandonment of family. I don't just mean that the longer the war continues, the tougher it is for us diaspora Jews. I mean the hostages. It is day 718, an unfathomable number. And yes, it is on Hamas to release them, to surrender, and to accept that they will not be part of the future of any Palestinian national entity. But the Hostages Family Forum, with whom some of our folks march every Sunday morning, has made no secret that it feels the Israeli government has abandoned their loved ones to their fates. The Gaza City operation isn't getting them home. Swinging and missing at the Hamas leadership in Qatar didn't bring them home. Polls continue to show that Israelis want a deal to end the war and bring everyone home, dead and alive. It is perfectly consistent with the value of Jewish peoplehood to press our elected officials to work to facilitate a deal that will accomplish what Israelis want. Prayers, via words and footsteps, must be accompanied by our loud and strategically placed voices. Speaking of the hostages, I spent the last Shabbat of 5785 reading Hostage, the English translation of Eli Sharabi's account of spending 491 days in Hamas captivity after being kidnapped from Kibbutz Be'eri. He spent months underneath Gaza alongside others who are still there to this day, including Alon Ohel. It is Alon's piano that sits in Kikar HaChatufim, Hostages Square in Tel Aviv. Eli was notified upon release that his brother Yossi had been killed in captivity and that his wife Liane and teenage daughters Noya and Yahel had been murdered right after his abduction. After being reunited with the surviving members of his family, Eli writes, "When night descends on Tel HaShomer Hospital, I ask to make two calls. The first is to Liane's parents. The second to Alon's. When they answer, I ask them to put me on speakerphone so that his sister, brother, grandma, and grandpa can listen too. And I talk. I tell them about their son, their brother, their grandson. I tell them that he's not the boy they remember. He's tougher, more mature, wiser. I tell them about his journey, his inner strength, the gentle, sensitive core wrapped in rough edges. I tell them he's strong. I tell them I'm convinced he'll survive, that he's their son, but he's now also mine in a way. I tell them that I'm still looking out for him, that I'm praying for his well-being and release." Eli Sharabi continues to be a voice for the remaining hostages, telling the Jerusalem Post, "In the darkness of captivity, I chose life, and beyond it, I continue to choose life. That choice means carrying the voices of those who cannot be here every day in everything I do, keeping their presence alive in my heart and actions." Eli Sharabi is the living embodiment of Jewish peoplehood, of the rabbinic statement, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh. Jews are inseparably connected. As a Jew, I want to live like Eli Sharabi, adopting the fates of his fellow Jews as if they are his own. I want to live like Sarah Hurwitz, interrogating our tradition in search of meaning and solidarity with other Jews, using what she calls a text line that has bound us for millennia. As a Jews, I want to invite Jewish anti-Zionists to consider just why their fellow Jews feel abandoned by them. And I want far-right Israelis and their diaspora allies to understand how the policies of the current Knesset threaten Jewish people and Jewish peoplehood. As a Jew, I want to love all Jews, even those who refuse to serve in the IDF, even those who will ignore the sign on my front door and knock this afternoon thinking I might not have heard the shofar, even those who double park on Union Turnpike and cause more traffic on Friday afternoon, even those who leave full shopping carts ahead of me online at the kosher supermarket because they forgot just one item. As a Jew, I want to love the Jew who sees photographs of imminent doom and vulnerability alongside the Jew who sees a picture of invincibility. The Hallel Jew and the Tachanun Jew are both my family. As I said, in the coming days, I will broaden my As a Jew manifesto on Shabbat morning and at Kol Nidrei. Today, on this first day of the new year, Tafshin Pei Vav 5786, I invite you, I challenge you to begin crafting your As a Jew narrative. And as you do, remember, you are not alone. You are part of a family that goes back to Abraham and Sarah, that has not just survived but thrived, and that you have the freedom to live your Judaism in an age of unprecedented blessings, in the richness of this country and with sovereignty in our ancestral homeland. The stage is yours. The audience waits with rapt attention. I give you this prompt. As a Jew, the rest in this new year is calling for your voice. Shana Tova.